Yo, what's up, world? This is Awo Fafore.
And this is Awo Sheun. Welcome back to the Who Made Y'all Priest podcast, where we talk about our spiritual journeys, our everyday life experiences, and the issues of the time from the perspective of two people who just happen to be priests. Fafore, what's going on, man?
Man, nothing much, man. What's going on with you?
Man, we got a new development in the Roe v. Wade surrounding abortion in the state of Texas, man. They started that trigger law today. So today it becomes illegal in the state of Texas to perform an abortion.
Oh, wow. What about the surrounding states? Do you know anything about like Louisiana?
I don't. I know that most of the red states have always had trigger laws in case the Supreme Court had ever overturned Roe v. Wade. I'm not familiar with any other state, but I know the state of Texas today, it became illegal for doctors to perform abortions. Now, I've come across a few people who are pro-choice who don't really understand what the trigger law does, because it doesn't. I've heard people say that they're going to be prosecuting women for getting abortions or seeking abortions, and that's not true. Women can still seek abortions in the state of Texas, and I'm sure that there will be some doctors who would still be willing to perform an abortion, but the doctor will be the one prosecuted for performing the abortion. There's also a gray area where if the woman could potentially die due to giving birth, or would be maimed in the process, they would still allow abortions in the state of Texas, but not for the sake of birth control.
I wonder how they define maimed, because if you ask me, I would say if you got a C-section, that's being maimed.
Right.
So if for whatever reason, if you can't have it vaginally, then I would be like, yo, I'm gonna be maimed.
But when would you know that?
That's a good question.
You would know probably way late in the pregnancy. And in a lot of the blue states, they are allowing third trimester abortions.
Yeah. One of the ways would be, now they say, when I say they, Western doctors, that if you already have had a child via C-section, then you're going to always have to have children via C-section. So if you already got one, and then the next one is like a oops, you could be like, yo, I gotta have a C-section, therefore I'm gonna be maimed.
Right.
So I wonder how they're gonna define that.
And I use that word maimed because I forgot the word that they use, but it made it seem as if the woman was gonna become decrepit or crippled. So yeah, man, that's something deep that we possibly gonna have to get into at some point in this season or in a future season, where we'll come back and revisit Roe v. Wade and how things are going in the state of Texas.
Absolutely. And if y'all haven't listened to our 2 episodes last season where we talked about Roe v. Wade, please go check it out. Join the discussion, leave comments. What do you think about, our discussion from last season? But we got another great episode today. Today we're going to continue that conversation about the divine feminine. And we have another woman joining us today to be interviewed. So, O'Sheon, you ready to just jump on into it?
Man, let's go and get with it, man.
Let's do it.
Hey, y'all.
Please. What's going on, Hayya?
Oh man, everything. I've been busy. I got my uniform on. I've been working today.
How are you? We give you thanks for taking some time and speaking with us. We really appreciate you.
Thank you. Thank you for having me. Let me adjust. Okay, there we go.
And Hayya makes juices. That's her uniform. She has her own business. So
yeah,
we're gonna get into that so she can, plug her business. But that's her uniform. That's her own uniform, her own t-shirt, her own logo. That's her.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah. I started with the plug.
Right.
I
feel you. You might be Congo might be your head.
Right. Okay,
But
fellas, how y'all doing?
Man, I'm doing well. I'm blessed.
bless,
Good.
bless,
Good.
bless.
Okay.
First of all, I want to thank you. You have been one of our biggest supporters in season one.
We really
Uh,
appreciate that.
like literally after every episode, she hits me up and gives me a rundown about what she thought about the episode for that week, and then we have a dialogue around it, and that's kind of how not only this episode came about, but us actually dedicating the entire season to the Divine Feminine was due to one of the conversations that you and I had, and you had mentioned the Divine Feminine. So I wanted to ask you, give us your thoughts on season one of the podcast, what you thought about it, and tell us what episode or episodes stuck out to you the most.
I really appreciated season one. I thought season one was phenomenal. I do my groceries on Thursdays most of the time, and that would be the days that y'all release y'all episodes. So it gave me something to put on. I always try to put something between my ears that's feeding me in some kind of way. So for maybe the first hour, hour and a half, sometimes the whole time I'm grocery shopping, I'm in and out of that episode. And it just I really appreciated having something that felt like a genuine conversation. Everybody has a podcast now. Everybody has a voice now. These day and age is kind of like being Professor X connected to Cerebro, and you can just kind of hear everybody's every thought. So it makes it that much better that it's an intelligent and an elevating conversation and not just like mindless prattle. So that's what I really appreciate about you guys' podcast. And I think the episode that really stuck out for me was Physical Trip, Spiritual Journey. That one just stuck out for me for some specific reasons. Because of my faith, we believe in anthropomorphism of God, and that God is not non-corporeal. That's something that's specific tenet of Nation of Islam. And I'm getting ahead, but it speaks to the reason why that particular episode really stuck out for me, because it felt like to me, for Foray, as you were describing your trip, it was like you were meeting God at every point. Everywhere you turned, you were meeting God. So that was the one.
Thank you. Thank you. I appreciate that. Tell us a little bit about yourself and your spiritual journey.
I'm a mother of two. I've been married for 19 years to my husband.
Gotcha.
When I was growing up, I'm a preacher's kid. I was I'm the daughter of an ordained Baptist minister. And of course, my parents are still married to this day, but they cohabitated for the 13 years. So growing up with my father in the house with my father, he was very strict. It was the kind of household where it was like sanctified, no secular music. Of course, we certain things got in. Of course, everybody in the world knows about Michael Jackson, all of Motown, that kind of stuff. But it was just not something that was played predominantly in my house. And we definitely better not act like we like it or dance or anything else. Or else the devil was gonna get you. You know, we grew up with a very no cards, no games of dice, no anything that looked like it was chance or anything like that. None of that. Strict in the household. But I never was good at going to church. Never, never. Ever since I was a little girl, I would lie. I would say my stomach was aching. Anything that I could do to get out of church, to avoid going to church. Sometimes my parents wouldn't go, but they would send us with other family members, like my aunt, my great aunt. Somebody would come and pick us up. Anything I could do to get out of church, I just did not think that it was a good way to spend time. And especially in an old Baptist church, it was less entertaining than church came to be later on in life.
Right.
It's a lot of old people. It's a lot of hymnal singing without the piano and without the. It just was a drag. I just never did like to go, and I used to think that I was bad for that. But later I found out that it just was my instinct, maybe intuition, that I didn't feel like that was necessary to have a relationship with God, be close to God, or experience, praise and worship and that type of thing. So as a teenager, my father left when I was about 12. And my mother raised us, and my mother was an avid church goer. We were in Bible study, we were in Wednesday night, and my mother worked 2 jobs. So that was a way for her to have a way to keep us kind of occupied and know where we were, and we were safe without her, losing track of us, or, my brother to the streets or anything like that. So she was really adamant that we go, and we were very involved. But I remember around the age of 16, we were having this youth meeting, like this Wednesday night youth group, which I started with another one of the other teenagers. I think I went to the youth pastors and said, hey, we ought to have a youth night where we meet and, discuss the Bible and stuff like that. So we were at this meeting one evening, and I was particularly angsty. And I said, you know what? I think that this is a game. And I said, I don't believe that the God, the creator who created all of us, would purposely create us knowing that we were going to sin and set all of the rules against us, and we die and go to hell. I was like, I something ain't adding up. And they referred me to be spoken to by the pastor. I also refused to get baptized. Around the age of 11 or 12, my mother set up for us 3 to get baptized. And
you was bad as hell then.
I was. I just wasn't with the games. I feel like I don't need to do all that. When my mother started talking to me about getting baptized, I just remember feeling a lot of pressure and feeling like, do I really need, like, what I got to prove? What am I trying to prove? Like, do I really need to do that? And I remember talking to her and just saying, I don't know if I'm ready for that. That seemed like a big step. And, my mother being like, what, girl, you are getting baptized. And she permed my hair and had my hair all nice just for me to put a shower cap on and do this stuff. And my brother went first, and I went in the middle. I'm the middle child of her children. And I went in the middle. And when I got out of the baptismal pool and came back to her, I told her, I said, that didn't do nothing. I said, the water was just cold. I was like, that's why people having the reaction. I was like, I get it now. It's theatrics. Y'all are playing up here. And my mom was like, shut up. Because I said it audibly. I said it loud enough maybe for somebody else to hear it. And she was like, girl, shut up. So I just kind of have always been resistant to the game. Like, I just, the game is just, beyond me. I didn't want no parts of that.
Right.
Mm-hmm.
Wow.
So take us.
That's part 1.
Yeah, that's part 1. Got it. So then take us through. So you're not a Christian now. So take us through that transition of how you went from that to where you left the church to pursue other things.
Okay, so I stayed Christian throughout my teens and my late teens, and I got to a point in my life where I was just kind of in a loop of guilt and repentance and that kind of circle, and I just kind of was fed up. And I remember having a conversation with my cousin, like, hey, I need God to come and sit down like on my bed. If he loved me so much, if this is the plan, why not have a personal, I wanted kind of like a theophany, I wanted to have an actual meeting with God. And I had this whole conversation with my cousin, and my cousin, I don't remember what his reply was, but I was like, I need God to come see me personally, just have a conversation with me and tell me what's really good. And I think maybe a few weeks passed, maybe 2 to 3 weeks passed, and I ended up coming in contact with my husband. And when I came in contact with him and we started talking, I found out he was Muslim, and he started bringing me different lessons. Now, there's a difference between Al-Islam, the Nation of Islam, and the 5% Nation of Islam, or what is now known as the Nation of Gods and Earths. But the literature that I got from him was some of each. So that's the way that I learned Islam. I learned Islam by the theology that the Most Honorable Elijah Muhammad had, by some of the lessons that the 5% Nation had. Like there were things like 7 points to ponder on pork that talked about pork being unclean and the trichina worm and all of that kind of stuff. There was even a Masonic lesson in it called The Widow's Son, that speaks about Hiram Abiff. And so that is what I got. I'm 19 years old at this point, and that's what I was being taught by my husband. And he would bring me a lesson, allow me to ask questions and leave. And he would be like, next time we talk, next time we see each other, let's discuss this or let's talk about this. And that's how I learned. And I think at somewhere around 2001, 2002, I took Shahada, which is the Declaration of Faith. Unrelated to knowing him, I had started going to this shop where this woman sold soaps and oils and incense and stuff. It was close to the museum district at the time. There's a barber college down there, like on San Jacinto, and there's somewhere down there. And she's Muslim. The name of her shop was Hijra, and the word Hijra, it means a migration. It's talking about when the Prophet, peace be upon him, and those initial followers of his went from Medina to Mecca, and how Mecca became the center of the Islamic world. So that's the name of her shop, was Hijra. So in that sense, I was kind of making my own personal Hijra from one place spiritually to another. And she had been educating me too prior to me knowing my husband. So it was kind of like I was getting it from all sides anyway. One day I was sitting there with her and she asked me, do I believe in Allah in the last day, meaning Judgment Day? Yes. She asked me about some of the other tenets of faith, and she was like, simple. Go and take your Shahada today because you believe. Why wait? Why? And it's the same concept as perhaps being baptized. Like you don't want to wait and then something happen. Or so it's the same type of concept. Like you might as well go ahead and take it today, then you cover it. So she went and got the imam. And the imam was teaching martial art in a dojo a few doors down from her shop. So he stopped his class and ran up the sidewalk. And I took my declaration of faith, which is when you hold one finger up and you say, you declare that there is no God but Allah and that Muhammad is his messenger. And I did that in 2002. I think I was about 20 years old at that time. And then from then on, I continued to study.
Wow. That's deep.
Yeah. That's a hell of a transition from being the bad kid in the Christian house to to taking your Shahada.
Right.
Yeah.
From a guy that ran down the street.
Right.
Wow.
And this goes to show, so O'Shayun and myself only have one bias, and the bias isn't becoming a follower or a practitioner of E5. The bias is know what it is that you claim to stand on.
Right.
That's it. You know, as you'll see, we'll have other people from other traditions and other faiths on the show. It's not that we're pro E5. I mean, we are pro E5 because we love E5, but you know, we're not trying to convince the whole world to practice E5. What we really want is to educate yourself on what it is that you claim you stand on.
Right.
And you know, as you can see, she knows her information, and that's kind of where we connected in our conversation. I was like, yeah, she on it. I told O'Shayun, like, man, yeah, Hayya is really on her information. Like she knows her stuff, and she can talk that talk. This is why I follow what I follow. I studied it. This is what, you know, I believe, and this is what I stand on. So I love it. I love it. I don't care what it is that you practice. If you could do that, I'm good.
Right.
So I don't know a ton about Islam. It is something that I actually do want to spend more time to get familiar with.
Me too.
But one thing that I've heard about, I won't say that I know, something that I've been heard about is that the Nation of Islam isn't considered Orthodox Islam. Is that correct?
That's correct.
Now, why is
100%.
that? Why is that it's not considered Orthodox?
The Nation of Islam is not considered by Orthodox Islam Muslims Orthodox because they have a different theology than what the Most Honorable Elijah Muhammad's theology was. The Most Honorable Elijah Muhammad's theology is based on that God came in person July 4th, 1930, in the person of a man named Master Fuad Muhammad, who was a man that studied and traveled back and forth between the United States and what is now called the Middle East or the Eastern world for 20 years before making himself known to us here in the hills of North America. The main point of contention between the Orthodox Muslim world and the Nation of Islam is the fact that we are not saying that Allah is non-corporeal, meaning that he's an invisible spirit that cannot eat, cannot talk, cannot walk, cannot dress, cannot speak, because we met him, we supped with him, we danced with him, he taught us classes, he weighed the earth, he taught us actual facts, and all of the lessons that we have that make up what original people needed to know, what Black people needed to know here in North America. So that's the main point of contention. There's a lot of other things in Orthodox Islam that we do not follow. They have all types of superstitions. If you follow the messenger, there is no superstitions. So things like, for instance, one of the things that in Orthodox Islam I've always heard is about people covering. If you have like things in your home, like little bears or little things that your children play with that have eyes and things like that, sometimes people will cover them up for some superstitious reason, as if they could be considered a puppet or be considered a an avatar of like a different entity, a malefic entity or something like that. There is none of that. There's a lot of little customs and stuff, but the main point of contention is Allah's corporeality. They believe that Allah is a spirit, which is the concept in most large religions, is that God is a spirit and is not a man that's walking around in a body. Most Honorable Elijah Muhammad's theology states that the Black man is God, and that every time you turn around and you're looking at a Black man, you're looking at God. And people don't want to deal with that, but they're mothers and fathers of every civilization, every monument, everywhere you go. You can go down into Mexico, and there are monuments of us, old. Every time you dig, the oldest bones that were of a female, we call her Lucy, right? Original woman. And that's the point. The point is that the mothers and fathers of civilization who have been denied that I don't want to say glory, but it's just fact. Most people in the religious world seem to feel like they're doing you a favor by bringing you into a culture that was really established a long time by a civilization of people that look like you. Absolutely. And that is the point of contention. But he was not completely rejected by the Orthodox Muslim world. That's what a lot of people don't know. The Most Honorable Elijah Muhammad did a tour of the Eastern Hemisphere and went all throughout Africa and was welcomed, was heralded, and was given gifts and accepted. And all types of clans and all different places, because there's a lot of places in Africa where they have the cultural practices where they still have different deities and stuff like that, but they also practice Islam on a daily basis too. There's a lot of places like that, so he's been accepted in a lot of those places. It's mainly amongst people that don't look like us that have the contention.
That's deep. I didn't know that. I guess the majority of the public doesn't hear about that or doesn't give credit to that to anybody but Malcolm. You know, it's kind of been highly publicized or been made to I guess for us to think that Malcolm was the one who went to the East and kind of had all the fanfare from Muslims worldwide, and not the Honorable Elijah Muhammad.
Right.
The
Yeah.
Honorable Elijah Muhammad's goal was to connect us with our brothers and sisters over there. And
Right.
the cover of the original newsletter that he had, Muhammad Speaks, the cover of it was a sun, and that meant the sun that was shining on um, the Nation of Islam, or really the universal family. And then there was a set of arms reaching from the west and a set of arms reaching from the east, connecting with that sun in the middle, and that was meant to symbolize us connecting with our kinship in Africa.
That's dope.
Yeah, I didn't know about the that was the main contention between what they call Orthodox Islam and the Nation of Islam, about the theology, that was a theological difference. I didn't know that.
Yes, that's what it is.
That's deep. That's deep. Now I have like several friends, or even on that documentary that came out about who killed Malcolm X, and when you would have the names or the titles of the people they were talking to, you would see that a lot of them were ex-members of the Nation of Islam, but they were still Muslim, and they went to become Orthodox Muslim. Why do you think a lot of people make that transition from the Nation to Orthodox Islam? And why did you stay with the Nation?
I can't really say. A lot of those people lived before my time. And the way that it's been explained within the Nation of Islam is that the whole issue with Malcolm was that he insulted the Most Honorable Elijah Muhammad by some of the things that he was saying about him, claiming to be exposing and stuff. And that because a lot of people looked up to Malcolm. He was the brother captain. It is a military structure, and it is like a family. So you have a chain of command and people that you report to. And he was the captain of the Fruit of Islam. So they reported to him, and they looked at him as an authority figure and as a brother figure, and in some instances a father figure. But the Most Honorable Elijah Muhammad is the big father. Right. So to have those two people that you love very much, and you're invested in the vision that they're supposed to be in this vehicle helping you realize, creates a rift. And a lot of people didn't know which way to go. They wanted to stay with the Most Honorable Elijah Muhammad, but they also wanted to support Malcolm. And then in some instances, people completely abhor Malcolm in some instances. So you had people just kind of decide that they couldn't deal with the contention. They couldn't deal with all of that, so they fell out. Now, as far as going to practice Al-Islam, I can't say why a person would do that. It's a lot easier, I think, to go and practice Al-Islam because it's widely accepted. You don't have to constantly debate other people. You don't have to constantly explain to other people your views and your theology. People want to know if you walk around calling people devil all day and stuff like that. It gets old. Like it gets old. People don't want to do that. But the beauty in the Nation of Islam is that it gives us a culture of regality. Something that we hear talked about a lot. It's popular to talk about ancestral lines and that type of stuff. But I truly believe that I come from an ancestral line of people who must have been Muslim and must have been Moors, because I've experienced too many different aspects of coming in contact with Islam. It's like I came in contact with Islam until I decided to practice. So, the Moors ruled from 711 until 1492. Now, we grow up saying that rhyme in school in 1492, Columbus sailed the ocean blue, but we don't talk about what predates 1492.
Right.
So you can't have a civilization, people that ruled Europe, which now is seen as the seat of power for white people all over the globe and for colonial powers all over the globe. Those people ruled. Not only did they rule Europe, but they embellished the lives of all of the people that came in contact with them. We have surgical practices. We have the Arabic numbers 1 through 10. We have clocks. We have all type astrolabe. We have the telescope. We have all types of inventions, plumbing, running water, all of those types of things because of the Moors, and which was a Muslim and Islamic empire. So some of us lines go back to that. So having the Most Honorable Elijah Muhammad and the Nation of Islam allowed for some of us to tap into that, so that we could experience a higher level, a higher quality of life. It's really about refinement of oneself. And that's something that I don't think people can get from the outside. You just think that people are covered up just to be covered up. But he gave us a distinguished way of dress, which is why the sister's headdress is to the back and not draping across their chest or not completely covering their necks like how you see those in the so-called Arab world. So it's really about giving us a refinement. And that's why I've stayed. I'm not in a temple or a mosque, but one of the first things you learn in Islam is that your home is your masjid. And that's the way we conduct it. It's always got to be smelling good. It's always got to be something cooking that smells good. It's always got to be clean. It's got to be comfortable. And really, we strive for opulence. We strive for it to be opulent and hopefully extravagant. Inshallah, if God say the same, my home can be extravagantly opulent because that's what we strive for. Because we say that Allah is beautiful and loves beauty.
Yes, I love that.
Hopefully, I answered your question.
No, you absolutely did. You absolutely
Yes.
did. It sounded a lot like, in my story where I absolutely fell in love with Taoism, but then one day I was just thinking to myself, like, man, I ain't Chinese. You know what I'm saying? I need that cultural connection, and Ifa gave me that. So yes, that's dope. And inshallah, that's my word. My brother Mike, that he's Muslim, so he'll say that. Or I remember when before I was even E5, like when I was telling the truth, and somebody be like, "Man, for real, that really happened?" I'd be like, "Man, right hand to Allah," because I got that from Mike. You know what I'm saying?
Right.
Yeah.
Right.
So from talking to Fafore, I've come to the knowledge that you practice some other things besides Islam. So how do Muslims that take the fact that you practice other things like tarot?
Nobody said nothing to me. Who gonna check me? No. I don't have anybody. This is something that a lot of people don't know. It's a lot of sisters in the Nation of Islam that use crystal technology. That a lot. It's not something that was prescribed by the Most Honorable Elijah Muhammad, but it's not something that was, what's the word I'm looking for, forbidden, or you know what I mean? It's not a taboo. Right. It's not a taboo. So I don't have anybody that I know that's Muslim come to me and say you shouldn't be doing that. Now, I don't know no Orthodox Muslim though. Orthodox Muslim might come to me and be like, sister, why you whatever, but no, I don't have anybody that comes to me and says anything. They might ask me to pull. I haven't had anybody ask me to pull for them in a long time. But it's not my first mode of divination or my first mode of communication with spirit. My first mode of communication with spirit is dreams and dream interpretation. Which for And what people will find out, if you just branch out, you'll find out for everything, there's a modality within different religions. So sometimes when I'm looking for a symbolism or something sticking out for me in my mind, I have to compare what is common Freudian and Jungian symbolism to what does Islam say about this symbol. Because culturally it means something different. It's just like in what people call New Age, which is really resurgence of old age, versus Christianity.
Right.
Christianity is the symbol of a snake is automatically malevolent, it's automatically evil. But we know the symbolism of a snake to be about energy, about regeneration, about rebirth and renewal, about kundalini, and about all of that. So it really depends on who you're talking to. I just don't have anybody in my life that is not part of my culture, or
Right.
part of cultures that belong to the original family. So
Right.
I don't have that problem. When I do interact with others, I'm able, because I study, because I read, you have to read. I'm able to reconcile all of that with people.
Mm-hmm.
So I really don't get that much.
That's good that you don't have that experience. I mean, I'm a little biased. I'm pro-Islam. My father's mother's, that matrilineal line goes back to the Fulani people, which is the largest tribe in Africa, and they are definitely Muslim. So yeah, I got a little bit of bias. I think a thing that people don't really understand is that a form of divination, you'll find that in the Abrahamic traditions. I remember when I was reading and I came across that Islam, had a form of divination. If you go back to Christianity, the Gnostics, they have a form of divination. How did you get involved in tarot? And what drew you to that in particular?
Okay, so actually the way that I got started with it was my husband he's an ARNA, or he's a registered national of ARNA. If you don't know what that is, it's Aboriginal Republic of North America. Now, before you should know something about it,
Dr.
because
Ali
we
Muhammad?
were Dr. Ali Muhammad. We were in the 40-day fruit fast group with him and Inky, and that was around the time where he started up ARNA, and part of his theological cosmological course was learning cardology and being able to personality type yourself based off of the 52 card deck of playing cards, right? Which is also one of the oldest forms of divination that there is. The actual playing cards, the divination with the cards came before playing the games that we play with them, right? So we have a lot of his material. We were really rocking with him tough at the time. So we bought the course, and this is the course. And in it has, this is the workbook that shows you the instructions of how to calculate what your birth card is, and some of your other cards, like your life, your challenge card, or that type of thing. And then this is the workbook. So I actually did my own cards. This is a worksheet with my cards up to like my Pluto card and other stuff. And typed myself. I typed my husband, my children. I typed one of his cousins. I typed one of my Muslim sisters from Nation of Islam. And I typed a couple other people. Whoever saw me working in this workbook and asked me to type them for their first 13 cards, which will tell you like your birth, your destiny, what you should be working on, what your challenge is, what's going to be your reward for overcoming your challenge. Sounds familiar, doesn't it?
Yeah.
Sounds a lot like a lot of other divination systems. So this was what I got into first. This, in my opinion, is more accurate, but it's harder to me. And I wanted to see if I could compare the meanings and the readings that you get from tarot to this system. So I think I will be going back to the 52 card system. At one point, I had a big board with all of the cards on there, and I would use that to practice. And, you know, it's just about practicing and really honing in on the meanings of the elements and the symbolism of it. So I wanted to try the tarot to see if I could interpret the symbolism and could I do it intuitively. And that's kind of how I got into that.
Right. So one of these questions I formulated before I knew that you were a part of the Nation of Islam. So I know now that you don't consider yourself a traditional Muslim or you don't practice al-Islam. So what do you, with the practice of tarot and all of these other things that you're into, do you think that you fall more closely in line with the Sufis or Sufism?
I think that I rely a lot on my intuition, and instinctively I will probably say that that's true, but I respect initiation. I respect the fact that before you can say that you're part of an order, you have to make a commitment. You have to make a commitment to spiritually develop yourself. You have to make a commitment to study so that you don't misinform yourself and misinform others. So I won't say that I don't know enough to be stupid, but I do know that when my children were really small, we used to move the table out of the way and dance to zikr, which, so when you see the Dhikr is a form of praise. So dhikr is repetitive chanting of one of the three of the glorifications of Allah. So you can be saying Allahu Akbar, which is God is the greatest. You can be saying all praises due to Allah, Alhamdulillah, or you can be saying Subhanallah, which is praise be to Allah. You can be saying one of those three things. And so what happens is that music is often made that way, and different melodies, different instruments used, but it turns into this sort of ecstatic dance. And so when my children were really small, we would have nights where we would move the furniture and we would go like to YouTube. There's a beautiful one of women dancing in the water, and they're using the water as percussion. There's one of, so that whole concept of the whirling dervish, where you have the man that has the tunic on and he's dancing, he's in an ecstatic state of praise of Allah. So I just began to do that in my house before I really understood Sufism as an order. So yeah, you could say that I'm leaning towards that way, but I would not dare call myself Sufic unless I actually initiated and committed to that that line of study.
And that sounds really familiar. It's like the bembes that we have where we drum and the dance. We call it mounting, where you are mounted by spirit. So it's very similar. It sounds very familiar. Yes.
Yeah.
Yes.
That's what I would say that it's like for me. So yeah, I guess I'm headed that way.
Yeah, and I think I'm coming to the belief that all religion is the same. As I try to study more, like I said, I would love to learn more about Islam, but in my own home, of course, I have the Odui 5, the Bible, the Quran, the Bhagavad Gita, the Upanishads. All of it seems the same. It's just it's the same thing told through the lens of different cultures, and it's the same. It's the same to me. Yeah, so it's very similar.
I would agree.
Yeah,
I definitely got to a point where I would say, when someone asks me anything regarding God, I say all gods are personal. It's not up to me to determine to you what you should believe, who you should say, what name you should call, and stuff. I do have my hard yeses and nos about things, but I believe that for most people who are even asking, if you have the mindset to inquire, then we probably are going to be able to reconcile on some level and leave it at that.
Absolutely. Absolutely. I agree 100%. So, we are dedicating season 2 to the divine feminine. That's one of those areas that Oshayun and myself are trying to grow and expand our knowledge base on. And we wanted to take our listeners kind of on that journey with us. So you and I had a conversation about the divine feminine. Again, like I said, that was the precursor to not only you coming onto the show, but then it kind of developed into, hey, let's dedicate the entire season to the divine feminine. So tell me, how would you define the divine feminine, and why is it important?
Let me see. I got an answer to this because I wanted to be prepared. Wow. So, yeah, the divine feminine, at least in Islam, because I think there's a lot of iterations of it. I think my answer for this kind of sprung from talking about some of the women in Islam. I got a real good answer for this. Hold on. Let me see. Let me
We want it
see.
to. We want it. We want to hear it.
Because you sent me these ahead of time, so I'm so glad because it gave me a chance to kind of ruminate or something like that on it.
Right.
So what I'm gonna say about this, the divine feminine in Islam is representing the unseen principle, meaning that man, I really don't want to get man is considered the principle that is seen, exposed, manifest. And the feminine is considered the principle that is not yet manifest, yet holds all the potential for manifestation. And what I always tell people is that this is why women in Islam are cloaked and cloistered. We often are with women. People don't really see me after about 7 p.m. unless I'm with my husband, because just the way that I live a life that is mostly cloistered, where I'm safe, where I'm secured. It's a practice that we do because of Islam, but it's not repressive the way that people think it is.
Mm.
And it's not even really as much about security with the threat of danger is as it is about adoration. Like the way that you would go into the basilica, for instance, all around the world in the churches that people go to every Sunday, there's a fetish of Mary and Jesus. And we see that all the time, but they white. But in the very exclusive places where the highest potentates go, the highest people are able to visit, in those small enclaves, the fetish is black.
Right.
And with a black child, because that veneration is a different type of veneration than what you see every day.
Mm.
So in that instance, the divine feminine is such and is depicted in my religious culture of that you don't get to see this every day. This is really, really special, and you don't get to see it every day. What you do see of it is just a sign of something that is greater than it. And because she is the feminine principle, and we know that she holds the potential for everything, for a Messiah, for a new world, for a healing balm, for medicine, then we're going to only show you some of it so that you know that it exists. Because if we didn't show you what we're showing you, you wouldn't even think that it was possible. You know,
Wow.
you wouldn't be able to fathom it. So when I talk to people about it, I often describe the magician that's on the stage and he's showing you, hey, I got this hat and I got this wand. If I tap the hat with the wand, I can make something appear. Now, the hat isn't the woman. The hat is just like the indication that's the feminine principle. The void that's inside the hat, he tells you it's nothing in the hat. You just gotta trust him because you don't know, because it's dark inside of the hat. You can't see.
Wow.
You don't know what's in there or what's not in there.
Mm.
That void that's inside the hat, the black space that's inside of the hat, is the woman. You can't know her. You can't know her mysteries. You got to be in there with her to know. That's why you have a husband. That's why you have children. Your children know. They've been there.
Right.
Your husband know. He been there. And it's not even the sense of the magician that the wand is the indicator of the power that the magician has. It's a phallic symbol. It's a phallic symbol, but it's not penetrating the hat, because we know that in the West, sex is like easy come, easy go, but it's really, really a lot higher and a lot deeper than that. So cloaking the woman is letting you know, like, it's deeper than that. You really have to know her to know what you can get out of that void, what she can produce, what she can multiply. So when the trick is complete, and we could go another direction with that, but when the trick is complete, a rabbit comes out. Now, the rabbit is a universal symbol for fertility, and we know that rabbits multiply like crazy. So again, we talking potential. That void is the potential for everything that you could dream of, that you can think of. It's not true or untrue that it's nothing in the hat, because it's potentially nothing.
Right.
But
And
it's also
potentially everything.
and potentially everything. So that's the divine feminine. And that's why people have to understand that we have this argument in society now about women being liberated and what we can do. Sure, you could show it all. You could. But I just want you to know, it doesn't mean the same thing as when you're not showing it all. When you're giving a little, but you're leaving a lot left to the imagination, because you want to have that void. And when you have that void, it's always cooking. Something is always brewing in there and stuff like that. You always have to leave something. You cannot give it all away. That even when that rabbit comes forth, the rabbit itself isn't what she's giving you. The rabbit is just potential. Because you put it with another rabbit and you can have an infinite amount of rabbits. Or you could just cook it. You know?
Hey,
Man, you gave him a word.
Busy, O'Shea. I told you
so,
you busy.
So that's the feminine principle. That is the feminine divine. That's what it means to be divine. And that's why it costs something to go there. That's why somebody got to bring you their offerings. That's why they got to give you something. Because it's just, everybody isn't revealed that. And the whole processes of all the religions, everything that we do, all of the rites, all of the rituals are just about that at the end of the day. Coming up the aisle when you get ready to get married, coming up the aisle on Easter, you coming up that vaginal canal, going to where the fruit of the womb is, and performing that rite and that ritual so that you can be blessed, so that something good can come forth. In every rite. When a man marries a woman in Islam, he says the same thing as he says when he gains a she camel, which is, "Oh Allah, please give me the good of her." And it's not to reduce a woman down to a beast of burden, but it's to say that the same way that we know that this animal, which is a commodity, which is something that is to be acquired, that is good for us, can give us milk, can give us other calves, can take us back and forth. We know that this woman can give us good things, can bless us, can multiply us, can further our station in life. So that's what it is to be divine feminine.
Man, I've never ever heard someone explain why the women are cloaked the way that you did. And again, it's familiar to Fafore and myself when we talk about Odu, and Odu being black matter consciousness, and being the void, and being the darkness that gives birth to everything. And you can't see Odu.
No, right. You cannot. It's vast. in Islam, particularly when I say Islam, I'm always talking about the most honorable Elijah Muhammad.
Right.
In his Islam, he describes us as being born, coming forth out of the triple darkness, meaning that it's dark upon dark upon dark. And that first creator God, that first Allah knew himself in the darkness and was a spark and rolled around in the matter, in that dark matter. And this is why God is a black man. It's not just about nationalism. There's an actual deep cosmogonic theology. And he stated this. This is not us coming back 50 years later and reinterpreting his words. This is what he stated. That's why it's important for us as original people. That's why it's important for black people to at least examine. Take it, don't listen to, because it's like a bad word to say his name, you know? But you gotta examine it for yourself, because you're gonna find more than what you thought you would find. He describes that as, and if you go back and you look at other cosmogonies, we have the cosmogonic egg, right? We have the Ouroboros, of the serpent that swallows its own tail and goes on and on and on. And then you come bring it up to modern age, we have the Big Bang Theory, and we even have scientists that are now saying that the moon is a satellite because it was once part of the earth. But the most honorable Elijah Muhammad taught us about that in a lesson that we call Poor Poor Moon. We call it the deportation of moon, where the moon was deported from earth and lost its water, and this is why we have the pulling on the tides of the oceans. It's because the moon's magnetic is pulling on the waters of the earth, and it pulls on the waters inside our bodies, which women, where we have our menses and things. That's what he taught us.
This is probably, I usually don't, when we do our recordings and we get them edited and things like that, I always like to task Fafore with listening to them.
Always.
This will definitely be an episode that I will go back and listen to, because just the thing about the women being cloaked, and even in our tradition, when men see Odu, we only get to peek. We only get to peek at Odu. So the divine feminine of divine femininity, we only get to peek at it. And man, that makes so much sense. And even with the magician with the wand, and the Babalawo with the tapper, and the Opan being the womb, and the tapper doesn't penetrate the womb. And the Opan holds the potential for everything. There's nothing there and there's everything there. Oh yeah, this is definitely
the nothingness that gives birth to something, and nothingness that gives birth to everything.
That's right.
When she said that about the magic wand and the hat, that's the first thing that came to my mind. That's the Opan and the tapper.
Wow.
Or the
this is beautiful. This is beautiful, and this is again, it makes me feel more solidified in my belief that all religion is the same. I hate using the word religion, but I'm
fine with it. I'm fine with it, because I was a savage. I'm fine with it. I was a savage. People don't even know. I needed the board. We call it in Islam, in Nation of Islam, we say that we have a board in our back. We have a board in our back, meaning that we put a board in our back to get us to stand upright until we're trained, until we're back to ourselves, until we're binded back into our proper station. So take the board out my back. I don't know. I don't know what you might get. So I'm fine with the word religion.
Okay.
Right. I'm fine with the word religion. I don't have no problem with religion, because I need it sometime, because I can be stupid if I lose my religion. So I need it. I'm not there yet. I'm not healed to where I don't need it. Not at all. Not at all. I don't have no problem with people that say spirituality either, because I get it. I know where you're coming from. But as far as me, I need my religion, and I'm at the point in my life where looking at all these other different things is just driving me back to my rug. We could talk about that. We could talk about how we put this this Aladdin magic carpet ride thing in front of us, but then you think that Islam is something that's restrictive. No, I'm going on my carpet ride 5 times a day because I got something that I need. I got treasures and jewels and gems and stuff that I need to be getting when I'm on that carpet. So, all of these things are just kind of driving me back because I see so much more value in what I was given to practice.
And I want you to know that the reason I said I hate using the word religion is not what it denotes, but what it connotes is
right.
The baggage that it carries today. What you're using is the etymology of the word, which I'm familiar with too, isn't it's a binding back to our original selves. Yes. So I do understand.
Right.
In your experience in the Nation of Islam or practicing Islam here in the West, do you feel that the women are marginalized in any way?
So I did it reverse. I practiced Al Islam first, and then went into Nation of Islam, and some of the things I saw, I experienced were, we have this word now what we call microaggressions. They're not something that's outright rule of thumb, but I've experienced maybe being during Juma, which is our Friday prayer service where we meet, be in a small room compared to the men being in this large sprawling space, and women with children confined to maybe 1 or 2 little rooms where we toe to toe touching while while we're praying and while we're listening to khutbah. And I felt like that wasn't right. But I don't think that is specifically an Islamic thing. Those things are things that are permeable throughout all of society. It just, now Islam as a religion is touts the fact that we have specific codes of conduct regarding how to treat women. The 4th surah of the Quran is entitled An-Nisa, which means the women, and that whole surah of the Quran is dedicated to legal and lawful action as well as ethical action towards women, how to treat women that are young, how to treat young girls, how to treat widows, how to treat women who are even women who are prisoners of war or obtained through slavery. Yes, how all of that, all the conduct that is regards to women, how dowries and weddings are to be conducted regarding women. So it's one of the and as it's practiced in the West, it just kind of depends on where you fall. If you in the ghetto of Islam, like I'm talking about with regards to maybe Al Islam, where you in a community or in a ummah that is not particularly worried about how it's perceived from the outside, you may get stuck in like a little hole where the men are treating the women any kind of way and it ain't nobody that you can tell and stuff. You might, but that happens everywhere.
Right.
With regards to the Nation of Islam, because it is a military organization, it's built up like a military. You have a sister captain as well. There are outlets and ways for you to get remedy if something is to occur with you. So it's a safe place and a haven for women. We have different restrooms and different rest areas and stuff for our sisters that with young children and sisters that are nursing, and just in general, the culture is that you treat us with kid gloves, and you better not raise your voice. So it really just depends on where you at. It depends on where you at. But as in general, as a rule of thumb, the woman is to be regarded as the first person that you honor besides Allah. It's I have a little children's book on my shelf for my children. It says honor your parents. I used to order these little Islamic children's books for them, and in one of the pages it says, and it's one of the sayings of the Prophet, peace be upon him. It says, who do you honor first, and it says your mother, and it says, and then who? And then it says your mother, and then it says, and then who? And then it says your mother, and then it says, and then who? Your father. In other words, because your mother bore you, because she went through the pain of labor, and she washes you and takes care of you when you're young and feeds you and clothes you, you better make sure that you don't let nobody catch you dishonoring that mother or that woman. And we are assigned a wali. For my daughter, her father, of course, by default, by being her father, is her wali, her friend or her protector. But my children are very close in age. They're 16 and 17. And her brother is the youngest, but technically he's her wali. If anybody want to talk to her, they got to talk to him. They got to see him. That's her wali. That's her protector. That's her that's her broker. You know? So you want to get with her, you got to talk to Ali, her wali.
Right.
First.
So since we're talking about the feminine, let's talk about some of the women in the Quran. Can you tell us about a couple of women in the Quran and why they are important?
The Quran mentions the same women that the top 3 monotheistic religions mention. The Quran mentions Sarah and Hajar. Hajar has a specific role in the Quran because Hajar is put into the wilderness when she's in labor with, I think it's Abraham's baby, right? And the reason why her story is beautiful is because her story in the Quran is about depending on Allah alone for sustenance, for being provided for, because she was not being provided for at that time. The story is that she was running back and forth looking for shelter, and she was going between 2 hills that we call Safa and Marwa, and she's in the desert and she doesn't have anything to sustain herself and her newborn, and she goes to one of the hills and kicks her foot against a stone, and a well springs up, and they call that the well of Zamzam. And I believe that it's still a point, like it's a pilgrimage point. Because what happened was that an actual well was dug in that spot, and it's said to have pure water always flowing. So that's something about her story relates to us, the having faith and depending on Allah. Allah is sufficient for all of your needs, for everything to be, your needs are already met. Maryam, Mary, mother of Isa or Jesus, she has an entire surah dedicated to her. Surah 19 is the Surah Maryam, and it talks about her pregnancy, her life during her pregnancy, and her being blessed, and also her having a kind of personal relationship with God, because in this surah about Maryam, she's basically conversing with God and being like, people gonna talk bad, they're gonna talk about me, because here I am turning up pregnant, and Joseph is away. In this story, Joseph goes away, and there's this sandstorm that blocks out the light and everything, and she's there alone. It's like to the point where like can't nobody get to her. So I think that it's not Joseph that's away, her father is away, and that sandstorm allows for Joseph to come. So it's not an immaculate conception the way that it is biblically speaking, but because Joseph comes and stays with her, because she's scared because the storm is really bad and she turns up pregnant, she's like, she has to be prepared for what she's getting ready to do, because she's getting ready to bring, he's still considered a special child and a blessed child, and a prophet. So again, the story about trusting the process, trusting how the outcome is going to be, releasing the need to control the outcome is
O'Shea Mary.
Mariana's story. And I think I mean, there are other women, but those are the ones that come to mind because it's the same
Right.
stories,
Right.
Um, but there are women historically in Islam that are considered important women, both in our theology. Like there's a story about a woman who ate a man's liver in battle. Uh, and she tried to, but she couldn't really do it. But she was so angry and so bitter from having lost her father to this man that when it came time for her to exact her revenge, that's what she wanted to do. And it's a story about her personal redemption because she later became a follower of Muhammad. She accepted Islam, came to Islam, and became a very refined and one of the most devout followers.
Mm.
So there's a woman who is credited for the popularization of this tool called the astrolabe. um she's mentioned a lot in Islam, and then of course the prophet's wives, mother Khadijah and Aisha, they're mentioned a lot in Islam. Khadijah mainly because she was balling, like she had her own business. She was older than the Prophet Muhammad, peace be upon him, and she proposed marriage to him as part of a business venture. She wanted someone to come into her business. She was getting older and she needed somebody to like be able to hand her business off to that was trustworthy. So we look at Khadijah for industriousness and for being independent, an independent woman. We kind of uphold Khadijah highly. So those are some of the women in Islam that we talk about a lot.
Mm-hmm. Hey, Sam, the eating of the liver. That's
Yeah.
Ali right
Hey,
there.
that's the EYME. Yeah, yeah. As soon as you said it,
See?
yeah, yeah.
Yeah.
As soon as you said it, I thought about the EYME and
Mm-hmm.
even the significance of the liver that going into the EYME and things like that. Yeah. So, like I say, a lot of the stories, a lot of the
Yeah.
mythology, at least in our tradition, a lot of the mythologies are the same.
Yeah, her name was her. I want to give her name. Her name was Hind bin Utbah. Hind bin Utbah was her name. And her story was that she was, and it's like the liver, yeah, significance of the liver being the organ that processes bitterness, that processes bile and that type of thing. So it's about not being bitter. It's
Right.
about not, yeah, that you don't need to process that. You don't need to literally be bitter in order to move past the situation and, gain your redemption. So, yeah.
Mm. So Islam, one of the beauties for me about Islam is the discipline that is required to practice Islam.
Mm-hmm.
Is that one of the things that drew you into Islam? The discipline that was needed?
Um, I won't say that it wasn't the thing that drew me in, but I needed it at that time in my life. I needed it. I needed it so much at that time in my life that I think that it gave me a different level of self accountability. I was not the concept of somebody else paying it all for me was really making me a monster. It was just making me write check, write
Right.
karmic check. Like
Right.
I was just whatever because I know I can go back and go to the altar call or something. You know what I'm saying? And clean and clean it all up. But you don't never really get clean,
Mm-hmm.
you know. But going through the process in Islam gave me a chance to really clean my body up, to be able to gain clarity in my thoughts, to clean up the way I was eating, to clean up the way I was speaking, to clean up the way I was appearing to other people, how I was treating other people. It just gave me a chance to pause, to just put all the chaos on pause. I think
Right.
everybody need a point in their life like that. Wherever tradition you coming from, you need a point in your life where you really are truly abstaining. You really are truly cleaning up. You really are truly spending some time just purging everything that you've been carrying around with you. And if you've been carrying a lifetime of stuff around with you, yeah, Islam gave me that chance to really clear some of that stuff up. Mm-hmm.
And so usually when these traditions require a lot of discipline, I feel like the people that adhere to those traditions are more likely to allow their spirituality to inform their existence. So I wanted to ask you, how do you feel about abortion and the Roe v. Wade decision?
Yeah, the Roe v. Wade decision. First of all, I don't think that the governments of this world are just, and when I say this world, I mean all of the interconnected political systems and social systems that make up how we live from day to day. I don't think they're qualified to be able to tell a person what they can and cannot do, a flesh and blood living person, what they can and cannot do with their vessel, except that we give them the power. And I think that that's the crux of what women like myself and the majority of women contend that. Um, I believe that it's your responsibility, but not in the sense of like, oh, scolding women like you got to make better choices. But what you are actually saying when you say that they don't have the right to tell you is that you cannot then take that culpability and place it in the hands of a body that doesn't know anything, that don't know nothing about you, nothing about your personal circumstances, doesn't know anything about your previous traumas or anything like that, your physical, makeup or any ailments or conditions you have. All of that is really, really personal. And having that personal autonomy is more important, in my opinion, than having the right to be funded for an abortion. When you realize how important the personal autonomy is, you'll protect it, meaning that you'll decide when you're going to have a baby, when you're going to, and there, of course, are outlying instances, but that's what we have, the women that are being educated as midwives, doulas. All of this talk about the divine feminine, and there's a lot of like talk about it, but we got all of these priests. It really irked me that we had so many priestesses, witches, wise women, all of these women that purport to have these feminine initiations into our mysteries, but we can't come up with an answer for this. That's really telling about whether or not we're striving for an aesthetic, or are we actually in the manner of like, you got to answer for eczema, you got to answer for asthma. You working with the roots, you working with the herbs. I could tell you about 5 things right now that you bet not take if you got somebody in the womb. So I could tell, and you could go right to Whole Foods and get it. You could go right to Sprouts and go get it. And you should not take it. I was pregnant with Hakima, my daughter, when I was practicing massage. I was learning massage therapy. And in my hydrotherapy class, there was a lady that was further along than me. And we were learning reflexology. And her partner was told, don't touch this area of her foot, because if you do, we don't want her to go into labor. This is reflexology. We are worried about the wrong thing as women when we are talking about these governmental, these crooked, we know they're crooked, we know they're corrupt. We know that they don't have your best interest at heart. It's time for us to really, really become more centered about having our own interest in heart and taking that power. We are every day, all day, all these memes and all of this stuff about taking your personal power back and call your power back for real, for real, and really, really become the women that we say that our ancestors have wildest dreams about. Because you don't have to use a clothes hanger.
Right.
If you really got the juice, if you really got the juice and you really practice, you know that autonomy is the most important thing that you can hold on to. And it's not that I think that the reversal of Roe v. Wade was right. I don't think they're qualified. If they're not qualified to tell you in the wrong way, they're not qualified to tell you right. They're not qualified because their interest is not even about the good of the people. Their interest is for themselves. So how can you say that you want them to be able to tell you what's legal, what's not legal, when they don't? They tell you something is legal all day and it's not lawful according to natural law, according to universal law. That's what you need to be holding up as a litmus test to what you're going to do. And if you do that with where you're going to work, what you're going to eat and put in your body, what you're going to drink, what you're going to wear, where you're going to travel, you're going to be doing it naturally in every aspect of your life. So I'm not on the team of saying, oh, you should pick a better baby daddy. I'm not on that team, but I am on the team of self-governance and self-autonomy all day, every day. My children, I've taught them since they've been 5, 6 years old. Not because, I wanted to be the granola juice making mom. It just kind of turned out that way, but because the autonomy of being able to educate them properly and not indoctrinate them was more important to me than making a lot of money and all that kind of stuff. It costs something to be the boss. And when we say that, oh, we don't want you to tell us this, we want you to make it legal so that we can do this, you telling them that you are a minor.
Right.
You do not know how to conduct your own affairs, and that you are putting it in their hands to be able to tell you what to do.
Ashe. Straight like that.
Yeah.
Did I go off?
You went off.
So for people like myself that want to become more familiar with the scriptural aspect of Islam, where would you suggest that we start?
I would always say begin at the beginning. Now, the first surah of the Quran, surah means chapter. It's called Al-Fatiha. It is translated as the opening.
The opening. I just looked at it today.
The opening. This is the oft-repeated prayer of the Muslims. This is what I say every morning. Like if I roll over on my side to go to sleep, I recite this. And if I wake up in the morning, I recite this. It's called the opening, but that word Fatiha has a root, an Arabic root, and the Arabic root of that is miftah. And I learned this in the mosque. Miftah. Miftah means key. So I would not suggest to anyone to go start anywhere else but at the opening with the key. So you start there. The Quran you can divide it. It's divided up in 30 parts called Jews, J-U-Z, the Jews. And it's like sections. It's from one place to another place. So what you want to do is you want to look up Reading the Quran by Jews, J-U-Z. I'm sure that the Muslim Pro app can help you with it, but if you look it up in general, you should be able to find something that has a guide. And what it will do is it'll tell you from this surah and ayat to this surah and ayat is a Jews. And if you read a Jews a day, you will have read it in a month. in 30 days. If you read a juz a day, a section a day, you will have read the Quran in 30 days. So that's what I would suggest. Reading the Quran by juz. You could just Google that and it'll tell you juz 1 is from Al-Fatiha to this part in Al-Baqarah. And then juz 2 is from I'm looking at it right now. Juz 2 is from Al-Baqarah 142 to Al-Baqarah 252, meaning from that ayat to that ayat. Then on your day 3, juz 3 is Al-Baqarah 253 to Al-Imran 92. Now you're in the 3rd chapter of the Quran. Al-Imran is the 3rd chapter. So you read it by section, a little bit every day. One whole section though. Read the whole juz. If you got to set it down, come back to it, but make sure you complete that section to the next section, and it'll tell you. It's marked. You know, that's what I would suggest for people to do. If that's what you want to do, you want to delve into the Quran, read that, and also have a I would say something like a Muslim Pro app. Sometimes depending on what Quran you have, at the bottom there are little footnotes that will kind of give you a description of what's going on in the scripture. If you need a little bit more interpretation, there's some little interpretive footnotes at the bottom of it. So go by that as well.
You know, the reason Fafore was so hype is because he and I were talking about that earlier, and that you said at the beginning. I was talking to him about in Christianity, at least the Christians that I've come across. When you ask them where to start in the Bible, if I want to become more familiar with Christian theology, they don't say the beginning. Genesis.
Oh.
Because the Christian theology or the Christian belief is in the New Testament.
Yeah.
And, you know, in the writings of Paul. So, and I've heard other Muslims say that they would give you a specific surah. Start here, which is not in the beginning. I just can't remember what I've heard other Muslims say. And these were Muslims that practice Al-Islam.
And the answer you gave is like a good divination, which is 80% confirmation. When we were having this conversation earlier, right? And I was asking about what he meant, and he told me, I said, oh, that's easy. You start at the beginning. You start at page 1. And he was right. And he was saying that, like, you know, well, some people will do this, that, and the other. I was like, but those are those unlearned people that we're trying to talk to make sure they get on the right track, so then they become right. I said, yeah, I was like, let's have a conversation. I'll be surprised if she say anything but the beginning. And when you said the beginning,
it's an initiation. All these things that we're doing are initiations of a sort. And where else do you begin with anything except at the beginning?
At the beginning, right. And
if you don't begin at the beginning, you haven't gone through.
Right. I looked at it. I looked at it before we came on. Before we came on, I looked at it. Because like I said, I have a Quran. I looked at it and I saw that it was called The Opening. And I read it. I read the opening. And I was like, well, I guess this is where you would start in the Quran. You would start right here.
Right.
At the beginning.
You must start with the key. You must start with the opening and the key.
Ashe.
Yeah.
Ashe.
Right.
Well, Hayya, this was beyond all high expectations that I had. I mean, you took my expectation and you exceeded it. Man, I am so grateful and so thankful for you blessing us with what you blessed us with. I'm gonna have to go back and listen to this with a notebook and write some things down.
Right.
Because I learned some things.
I might want to be Muslim now.
Alhamdulillah. Come on in.
I'm telling Barbara.
Yeah. No, this was a beautiful episode. We really appreciate you coming on and gracing us with your presence. We learned a lot. I learned a lot. There were some things that you said that I've never thought about even to ask, you know. So yeah, we really appreciate you.
Thank you. Thank you. I'm glad you had me on. This is fun for me. This is what we do with my children are used to it. This is what we do in this house. So I was expecting my husband to like come in and peek in or something like that, but he left me alone. So I guess I must have been on point because that's my teacher. That's my teacher. So I'm like, if I say something off, he might come in here and peek at me, like, you know.
Hey,
But I
yeah.
guess I must have
That
been
ain't
on
what we
point.
talked about. Right.
Right.
Yeah.
Right. So I
Thank
greatly
you. Thank you for
appreciate.
having me.
I hope you guys enjoyed the episode as much as we did. Watch this again. Get your pen and pad out. Jot down some notes. You definitely gonna have to Google some things. We learned a lot about when you are having spiritual conversations amongst people who are learned. You transcend the tradition. Um, So I hope you guys realize this. Again, our foundation is E5. You know, E5 is what worked for us. Might not work for everybody, and that's okay. All we care about is that we all come to an understanding. And with that, it takes study. So again, thank you for going on this journey with us. We learned some more about the divine feminine. I hope your definition and understanding about the divine feminine has expanded. I hope your understanding of Islam has expanded. Again, thank you for joining us. Check us out next week. And as always, life's a journey. Don't forget the map. Peace.
Peace.
Peace.